Well, hello and welcome back. It's me again. So since filming the last episode, some things have moved on. I have installed the clutch and the radiator. Also, I have received the front suspension and some more parts. Today's plan is to assemble the rear frame part here, rear end of the bike. But before doing that, let's quickly check how this clutch thing went. So I remove all the clutch case bolts. And as there is silicone sealant, then it's quite hard to get the case free from the engine. If the cover is off, then I can clean the surfaces from the old sealant. And I use a little Dremel tool for it. It's important to clean all the mounting surface from all the oils. So I open up the original pressure plate parts. Again, little cleaning to make sure that everything is dust free and perfect. I installed a new black pressure plate and pressure plate ring and apply new sealant on the engine side. Well, some people apply it on the cover side, but I prefer to put it on the engine side. Doesn't matter actually. And on goes the new clutch case together with its transparent window. All the bolts must be tightened with the correct torque to prevent damaging the thread. And on the radiator side, it's important to fasten all the hoses and wires correctly behind the radiator because it's really tight fit there. So the clutch is ready now. This is a CNC Racing clear clutch case and it comes with these silver cut areas from the factory, but I didn't like these silver cuts, so I made this fully black, so it's now murdered black. It's fully re-anodized, so all the silver areas are now black. Inside we have black pressure plate from CNC Racing also, and this orange pressure plate ring is from AEM. As I mentioned earlier, this is really special part to me because when I got it, I was probably the first guy to have it in the world. I asked them if they have something for the clutch. They had already designed it, but they were not selling it, so they agreed to make me like a kind of special edition part. So we have AEM and my logo on it, and yeah, it's really cool part and cool story about it. Cool story, bro. It is exactly how I planned it to look like. And another thing that catches my eye all the time is this Erlin's new pressure tube. It's nothing special, but kinda is too. Just the black part and the black suspension. But if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. I mean that it's like an aftermarket part, and that's why I like it. It doesn't like scream, oh look at me. So yeah, if you know, you know, and I know, and that's enough. But anyway, let's move on to the other parts. Here we have fully serviced front suspension. This means that all the oil seals and gaskets, everything are changed. Also, we have new oil in it, and they are also lowered. Previously, when I sent them to service, I wanted this silver area to be halfway. So basically, it would have meant lowering the front suspension 9 centimeters. We did not lower it quite that much because, you know, this end here, 3 or 4 centimeters is just a dead zone where nothing happens. So currently we have about this much travel, and if we would have lowered it more, then the riding would have been a little bit too crazy, I think. So instead of 9 centimeters, we lowered it about 6 centimeters. I hope it looks okay, but let's keep in mind that one thing is the design and everything. The other thing, in the case of this bike at least, is that I want it to be nicely rideable also. Here we have a box full of brand new parts from Ducati. Let's open the box and let's see what's inside. So lots of plastic parts on the ground, all brand new parts. As you remember, for some reason I was not able to decide what to do with the old plastic parts of the bike, because for these kind of parts I always prefer them to be pure plastic as they are from factory, or carbon fiber then maybe, but I don't prefer to paint them. I could do it, but for some reason I don't like these parts to be painted. And you know, the old parts were just looking, they were all okay, but they were just looking kind of tired and ugly. And when I saw that these parts are actually not that expensive, all these parts on the ground here are roughly 200 euros, $200 then. So it seemed to me reasonable to just buy new parts. It saved me a lot of time also, and I don't have to like prep and paint and you know, all these kind of things. I just take the new part and put it on a bike. So yeah, this thing is finally decided, and I'm really again satisfied that I chose this path. This is English, but I try my best. Now you have seen the clutch and the suspension and these plastic parts, and now finally let's start assembling the rear end of the bike. So today's first step is to put the engine covers back on, but before that I have to get this thing back here. Let's add the first brand new plastic part also. This thing is quite tricky to get here because it's really tight around the frame here. To make sure that you don't damage anything here, I covered it with tape. So well, yeah, it's really tight. You have to like put it here on an angle, you know, somehow. So this one there is quite hard to reach, but anyways, going okay. So let's add the new part. So the belt covers are on and the new plastic parts added. Everything looks really sharp. Great. So let's move on to the rear end. I'll start with installing the exhaust heat shield, and then let's move on to the frame part. I will use these to minimize the risk of scratching something. I took it off again because I did little miscalculation. I have to mount these together and then we can slide in the rear end. As there are many wires and electronics in the rear end, then the order of assembly is quite important to get all correct. Also, as the rear end is pretty low and swing arm and suspension is really close to the rear frame, then there is not much room to work on the bolts that need to be fastened from underneath. So this side is roughly assembled and this plastic plate is on its place. Now I have to put this metal heat shield here, and I can put other side also. So the rear end is almost complete now. The frame parts are attached. Wires and everything should be in the right place. I polished the rear lights also and attached them, but currently I cannot continue the work on the rear end because I haven't finished these rear plastics. That's why this rear end stays like this, and I will continue with the front end now. So let's start with this thing. I have to put the bearings back on the shaft and grease it and then put it inside and tighten the nut correctly. Anyway, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. Put the bearings back on, grease it, put the shaft in and tighten the nut. And then let's continue with the front. Super. So the shaft operation is done, but I wanted to show you, maybe some of you are wondering how I know where all the bolts and nuts go. If I disassemble the bike, then I bag the bolts according to which part are they taken from and so on. Now if I'm like working on the front parts, then I gathered all these bags where are the correct bolts, and it's easier for me to know what and where. So now I'm going to continue with this part. So these are installed now, but it's getting late. I'll finish for today and let's continue tomorrow. So, new day, new power. Let's continue with the front end. I will put together all these instrument cluster parts and let's mount it on top of the triple clamp. Also, let's put back the ignition button. So now I'm going to put back the ignition button. For this I have brand new special bolts. Basically, if I tighten these bolts onto the frame, then I have to break the upper part. If you break it, then it's okay. So basically it has to look like this at the end. So now I tighten it, and if it breaks, then we're done. So let's put back on the instrument cluster. So time to mount the handlebar, freshly painted, has to go like this. Here are little dots on the handlebar that help to align it correctly. So the handlebar is finally on, and now it's time to slide these shafts into these holes. To be honest, then I don't like to assemble the front fork at all because the suspension tubes are so easy to scratch. I use the red plastic parts to spread the holes wider to have more clearance for the mounting. Also, it's important to have both tubes in exactly the same height. And again, the final tightening is done with the torque wrench. Front suspension is quite important thing on the bike, so better to have everything fastened correctly. So the shocks are back installed, all the bolts are tightened correctly, and now it's time to lower the bike onto the stand. Let's see how it turns out. and it stands on the stands. Nice. Well, it took a little longer than I expected. Glad to see some visible progress finally. Bike stands on the stands now, so the suspension is back on. Obviously lots of work waiting ahead with the wiring at the front end. Also I need to polish the front headlight because there were like a few scratches on the headlight, but I will get rid of them. And another big thing that is waiting ahead is painting the design on the green body panels, but you will see it soon. There are not many parts left. Well, actually there are, but at least not as many as they were before. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, everything comes together nicely, a little bit slower than I expected because I'm doing all the client works also. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hit subscribe, then you will get notified if the new video comes out. Comment underneath, hit like if you like the topic. Check our Instagram page, there are some updates a little bit sooner probably than YouTube. And thank you all for watching and see you next time.